slice. Aliens or not, roll the dice. Are they out there? Who really knows? Flying saucers or secret shows? Strange encounters, blurry sights. Mike's got stories to share tonight. Look through the skies, the truth is near. Stick around, there's more to hear. Full-grown pizza's just begun. More weird tales, ain't this fun? Are they out there? Who really knows? Flying saucers or secret shows? Strange encounters, blurry sights. Mike's got stories to share tonight. Look through the skies, the truth is near. Stick around, there's more to hear. Full-grown pizza's just begun. More weird tales, ain't this fun? Lights in the sky moving way too fast. Mike's got the facts, let's make them last. Full-grown pizza, grab a slice. Aliens or not, roll the dice. Look to the skies, the truth is near. Stick around, there's more to hear. Full-grown pizza's just begun. More weird tales, ain't this fun? Fun, takes it fun. Boop beep, fade out.
All right, and welcome to the Full Grown Pizza Podcast. This is episode 36, and we are talking about unidentified submerged objects in this episode. We're going to be talking about a few different encounters and some interesting stories regarding those. Mike is going to be taking us on that journey. But before we get started, make sure to hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons. Make sure to hit the notification bell on YouTube so you know when we go live each week. And make sure to check out Ugly Chews as well if you're looking for some all-natural dog treats for your puppers. And we are ready to get started. Make sure to leave some comments down below as we go along and join the conversation. And let's get started.
All right, so we're going to be talking about USOs, which technically, I mean, USOs or UFOs, one of the main attributes of UFOs is that they are transmedium, which means they can go from ocean to air or air to ocean with seemingly no problem. Sometimes they don't even make a splash, you know, so a lot of people think that it's some kind of something to do with the force field they generate whenever they travel, or the kind of propulsion they're using. Sometimes they make a splash, so maybe it's a different kind of propulsion, or maybe they're doing it on purpose. But it's one of the primary attributes they look for when they see a UFO, if it's near water and it goes near if it can actually go through the water and come back out, you know, stuff like that. So, like UFOs, basically are all transmedium. If they go through, they can go in the water usually because of the force field that it creates. So we talked about some USOs before, like with the Tic Tac incident. You know, we talked about how the Tic Tac seemed to be communicating with some kind of larger craft into the water, and that craft into the water, which is about the size of a 737, they say, which is a pretty large object, and they can see the white water around it from the water going around it. And they said that sometimes the force field or whatever field they're generating from their propulsion could be causing that white water too. So that's an interesting detail.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That Tic Tac incident. And then also we talked about another USO incident. We talked about the Luis Elizondo thing when he was on Joe Rogan.
Oh,
you remember that story?
Yep, I remember that guy.
Where they were doing torpedo testing, and so they would shoot the torpedoes, and when the torpedo ran out of fuel or whatever, it releases ballast and floats to the top. So they're going to retrieve the torpedoes after. They had a guy in a helicopter and a frogman, I believe it was from the Navy or the Air Force, and he would go down to the water and grab those torpedoes. So one time when he was going down to eat torpedoes, he saw this huge UFO that he said was the size of an island. It was a black like ball. And he said he got close to it and he freaked out and started going back up the line because, of course, you would if you saw that thing when you're
Yeah, are you kidding
floating
me?
out
Like a giant
in the
island
middle of the
sized
ocean.
ship.
And it sucked the torpedo down and went down in the water again.
Whoa.
So all those are pretty interesting stories, especially if they're coming from military personnel, which usually are considered good resources.
Right, they're a bit more
reliable. I mean,
Yeah,
they're trained
reliable.
observers, especially Air Force or air pilots, you know.
Well, right, because those people, you would expect them to kind of know what they're looking at, right? Like if it was something
they're
else,
recognize objects in the air.
yeah,
So.
right, they would recognize like, oh, okay, that's just something else. But okay, so that makes sense. That's pretty wild. That's kind of a crazy one.
Yeah,
Like
that was a crazy one. I wish we got footage of that one.
Well, and then like last week we talked about, or not last week, last episode I guess, but we talked about the Baltic Sea USO.
Yeah, which looks like it was either like maybe it was a UFO that got jammed up on its re-entry to the ocean. Maybe it crashed into the bottom, or maybe it thought it was like higher, or the water wasn't as shallow as it was, so maybe it hit the bottom and skidded in like that. Because it looks like it had a skid mark in front of it.
Yeah.
And who knows how long that's been there.
Right.
So that's
right. And I just think that's such a cool thing because I never, until doing this podcast, I never really had the idea in my brain of like a USO. You know, you always hear UFO or UAP or whatever, but it's always aerial things or flying things. But then like USO, it's like, man, there's a whole different dimension to our planet. There's the whole underwater aspect of it that, you know, why wouldn't they be there too? Especially because
considering how much we don't know about the ocean. I mean, they say that we only explored 5% of the ocean's bottom. So
well, and you got to think too, because like if you've ever looked at, have you guys ever looked at like one of those flight tracker things before? Like, have you seen all the planes that are flying in the sky at all times? Like, it's insane how many planes are flying in the air all the time.
Yeah.
Like, if you're trying to be discreet, you don't want to be flying in the air. There's like 50 gajillion planes flying in the sky all the time. Like, you would want to be under the water where there's nobody. There's literally like no one down there besides maybe some marine biologists or whatever, some billionaires that are trying to go on a journey or something. You know, that's it. So but
it makes a lot of sense to be in the ocean. So
it makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of sense that you don't hear nearly as many stories about USOs because, well, they're obviously they're much more hidden. So it's always cool when we do have some stories to go into.
That brings up a good point because I got a lot of this information from a movie on Amazon Prime called Transmedium. It's talking about a lot about USOs, and it brings up this program that's in the Navy. It's called the Fast Mover Program, which is like an unofficial program in the Navy. And what it is that the submarines, whenever they find something that's anomalous, like something that's moving too fast, they just classify it as a fast mover and move on because they can't really do anything with it.
Yeah.
So they see a lot of stuff, and a lot of that stuff can't come out because they're in the Navy and they got clearance and stuff like that. They can't talk about it too much. And then you got to think about, you want to know what SOSIS is?
I don't think so.
It's this like set of noise receptors that we got all around the coast of America to detect like enemy submarines and enemy ships.
Oh, okay.
So we know when they're coming too close. So who knows how much information those guys are getting, you know, because they're probably hearing all kinds of stuff. And
that's true.
I mean, UFOs aren't known for making a lot of noise, but maybe they hit something or, you know, they make a mistake. They're not perfect. I mean, we've seen UFO crashes all the time, or a couple of those on the podcast. So
yeah. That's an interesting point too, because almost all the stories that we talk about have to do with the United States, or they have to do with, you know, being in the jurisdiction of the United States or whatever. But that does kind of beg the question of, okay, there's the whole rest of the freaking world too. Like what the heck, you know, what are they encountering and what's going on with them? Because we did have, God, I can't remember the episode now, but we talked about that Peruvian legend or whatever with the might have not been Peruvian, but it was that local town or whatever that had
Off
that.
of that was Tampico, off the
Yeah,
coast of
yeah,
Mexico.
Tampico.
Where
Yeah,
they had
Yep, Mexico. Yep. And it was and they had that legend, local legend that had been around forever about these this underwater alien base that's protecting them from tsunamis and stuff. And I think those are cool because man, we don't really hear much about the rest of the world and what they're encountering too. Like what is
yeah.
China encountering when it comes to these aliens and stuff, and what's Russia
They
encountering?
won't really tell us, but
Yeah, they're not going to tell us, but it makes me wonder,
But one of the stories I got for this was a Soviet researcher. So we'll go into some of his stories. Or he had one or two stories that he brought up. That he was big into the military there, and they had some interesting encounters with UFO or USOs and stuff like that. So
Okay.
all right. So one of the first ones I want to bring up is that. Go ahead and bring up that nightcap page.
Okay.
So this is a report that came from, it was in March of 1945 off the Aleutian Islands, which is like a small chain of islands off the coast of Alaska. So pretty isolated place, you know. They were transporting munitions and supplies to Alaska, and they were just out in the ocean, and they saw a large round object that had just emerged from the sea. Several crewmen saw a UFO actually appear from underwater, an estimated mile or so from the Delarock, which is the ship that they were on.
Okay.
The unmanned craft showing darkly against the setting sun climbed almost straight up for a few moments, then arced into a level flight and began to circle the ship. So everybody got a good view of it, you know, because it's going around the ship. So
okay, so it comes up out of the water and starts flying, and now it's like circling the ship.
Yeah, like they're trying to observe them, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you come out of the water like, oh, there's a ship here. Let's check it out, you know.
Oh, that's crazy too, because I mean, at least from my knowledge and my experience, like things don't just take off from the water, you know. Like if you're a jet, obviously you still have a runway out in the water, and the only thing that goes directly up is like a helicopter or something. And so, but then there's no underwater helicopters that I'm aware of that like come up from out of the water.
As far as I know, we don't have any trans-medium aircraft. So.
Yeah, so how, as a military professional or whatever, how do you even like wrap your head around something like that that's just came right out of the water and is now circling your ship? I mean, I would almost take that as a threat. It's like, okay, this thing is.
If you're a military, you know, ship, and you already have, they had guns on the ship and stuff. Yeah,
right. I mean, how else are you supposed to interpret that kind of thing, especially when you're a military, you're on a military ship or whatever, right? Like, that's always going to be a threat of some kind. Anyways, that's wild.
Yeah, so they kept observing the large object, and they estimated it to be 150 to 250 feet in diameter.
Wow.
Which is a big ship.
That's huge. That's like a lot of King Kongs. I don't know. I like whenever I hear these big like numbers and feet and stuff, I always think about King Kong, because King Kong, at least when I was a kid, everybody said he was 25 feet tall. And so I was like, okay, how many King Kongs is that? Because
it's almost 10, man.
That's like
almost
10,
as long as a football field. So.
Yeah, that could be 10 King Kongs, like in a monkey chain, kind of like those monkeys in a barrel, you know?
Yeah.
Back in the... yeah. Anyways, okay. So now that you have that image in your head, continue.
So it kept flying around them, and then it just took off southwest, and they saw flashes of light from the air where it vanished. So I don't know if it went back into the ocean or if it just, kept going. So that's pretty interesting encounter, especially in 1945, where you're not going to see much stuff like that back then, you know?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people say that the UFOs that we're seeing now is just our technology that they're testing out, you know?
Right.
A lot of that have the theory. So how are they doing it in 1945?
Right. Well, and we probably had nothing even remotely close to that back then. Like nowadays we have drones and things like that, but we don't really have that excuse for back in 1945. Plus, I feel like, isn't that kind of early for a lot of these UFO sightings? Like, don't we see like a lot of the UFO sightings that we've covered and stuff, aren't they usually like in the 50s, 60s, onward, right?
Usually, yeah.
Like, usually they're not in the 40s, so that is kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Okay.
All right, so the next one is the Mainbrace. So let's go to the
Mainbrace.
Mainbrace. So Mainbrace was an exercise that the NATO and all the allies pulled off in 1952. So they had a bunch of people there. They had what did they say? They say how many people there was there, but there's a bunch of countries, and they had a lot of UFO sightings during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most reported ones is the one from the Franklin D. Roosevelt, the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt. And the Franklin D. Roosevelt actually has a pretty long history with UFOs. It's had a lot of UFO sightings throughout its history. And one of the interesting things about the Franklin D. Roosevelt is that it was one of the first ships to carry nuclear warheads.
Wow.
So maybe that's why they're so interested.
That would make
in
sense because yeah, in a lot of the stuff that we've covered, especially with the blondes and these other alien species, they seem very interested in that kind of technology, you know, or at least when it comes to us, you know, they're very communicating with us and involved with us when we are around or involved with nuclear types of things.
So on this article, if you go down to the third reported sighting, it says that they observed a silvery spherical object that moved across the sky. One of the guys on the ship took a picture of it, and he thought it was a weather balloon because they did weather balloons a lot back in the day because you know, they had to check the weather for storms and stuff like that.
Right.
So he's like, I just took a picture of the weather balloon. And like, we didn't send any weather balloons up. It's not time for that yet.
Oh.
So he's like, okay. And then at the end of the thing, they said that there was a rumor that the FDR actually had an atomic bomb at that time that they were using to see if they could carry them and stuff like that. So,
oh wow, that could
that's
be
pretty
crazy.
interesting.
Yeah.
And if you go into the movie The Transmedium, they go to a lot more detail about it, but I didn't get too much detail about that. So
Okay.
let's move on to the next one. This is again the Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1954. All right, so they're out in the ocean.
Oh, is this the Shag Harbour UFO incident or no?
No, this is the second one. I didn't get a.
Oh, we're going to the second sighting now. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, this is. I couldn't find an article for this one, so I just had to go off my notes. All right, so they're in the ocean and they see a cigar-shaped object about 100 feet long come out of the ocean. They try to lock weapons on it, and they can't lock weapons on it. They won't lock onto it. They try to get aircraft in the air because it's a carrier. They have aircraft, so they're going to try to chase it down and see what they can do. They can't get any aircraft in the air. None of the aircraft will take off, which is crazy because they did something to the ship that they can't even get aircraft out.
Right, some kind of malfunctioning going on.
You know, it's a separate system, you know?
Right.
And so while they're watching the cigar-shaped aircraft, two more smaller UFOs come out of the ocean, and they're bright white, regular UFOs that we know, you know, that most people think of when they think about UFOs.
Yeah.
And so they're watching this big cigar-shaped UFO, and then the two UFOs come out of the ocean, and then another larger cigar-shaped UFO comes out of nowhere that they didn't even notice, and that one was about 300 feet long. So you have a big cigar-shaped UFO just sitting there in front of you, two smaller UFOs coming out of the ocean, and then the two smaller UFOs go into the 300-foot long cigar-shaped UFO. So it looks like some kind of transport ship for the smaller UFOs. Yeah.
That makes me think. Sorry, just real quick, because recently I saw an image on social media about. Have you heard of those beluga transporter aircrafts that carry? No. Okay, these things are freaking nuts. I'll find a picture while you're talking about it. But these aircrafts are aircrafts that carry other aircrafts and things like that, or like aircraft engines and things like that. They're massively huge, and I kind of want to find a picture because I think it could be.
Like the front end of it come off and they.
Yeah, and it could be a comparable reference. So I kind of want to find that real quick while you're talking.
So the smaller UFOs went into the big cigar-shaped UFO. And then the big cigar-shaped UFO hovers for a few minutes, goes up a little bit, and then comes back down and goes straight into the ocean. So I don't know. It's kind of weird that they did that because why would you go back into the ocean if you're just coming out of the ocean? But maybe they had to get. Maybe if you wanted to put UFOs inside a bigger ship, you don't want all the water, so you got to go out of the ocean and then put your little ships in there and then go back down so you don't get all that. You know, it makes a little bit of sense.
That makes sense.
So they're just putting these smaller UFOs on the bigger ones so you could transform them all underneath the ocean in the bigger ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you find your picture
That's
you're
crazy.
looking for?
Yeah, I did. Hold on. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so I just wanted to read about this real quick. So the length of this beluga is about 184 feet, according to this Google AI overview. Wingspan 147 feet, and it weighs about 40 metric tons, which is
Wow.
pretty freaking crazy. What the heck? And okay, so we'll Google image. We'll look at some of these pictures, so you can see like how freaking massive these things are. And look how tall they are too. Like they're very tall compared to like a normal aircraft. I want to see if there's like a comparing it. Oh, there you go. You can see they've got like another plane in there. Looks like a smaller plane or something, or maybe even a helicopter or something inside of it right there. But anyways, that's just wild. And that's only like, how much was that? They say it was 186 feet long.
Yeah.
So that's like almost, a little over half of what we're talking about here with,
300
like,
foot long
that is
cigar
just freaking crazy, dude. Holy shit.
massive.
Wow. That's wild. And so, yeah, dude, it just makes me think back to like when we've got all these different kinds of UFOs too, where we talked about the big mothership coming down for that giant continent-sized one. And then we've got all these other transporter ones, and even like the Black Knight satellite or whatever we talked about that episode, and them being out in orbit. It's like these aren't just like, we hear about the stereotypical UFO, but there's all these other ones too that people don't normally hear about, and so it's cool that we get to talk about these kinds of things. Anyways, carry on.
All right. So next encounter. So I didn't have an article for this one either. So this happened in 1964 off of San Juan, which is like Puerto Rico, I think. Anyway, in the Caribbean Ocean, they're doing another exercise with a bunch of subs, and they're just doing exercises like moving around and stuff like that. And so they encounter this object that is moving really fast, and they decide to just chase it, see what's going to do, where it's going, what it is. So they want to try to identify it or whatever. So they get permission to chase after it, and they're chasing this thing for 4 days. And every time they get like a little bit closer, the thing takes off some more. So they can never get close enough to identify it. And it keeps going like. So it'll go like really deep, and then it'll go really shallow without losing any kind of speed, which is kind of crazy too. I don't know how that works, but I'm sure you have to change speed or something like that. You want to go deeper, but anyway, so it kept going up and down and making kind of weird motions, and they're just chasing it, and they never get close to it. And so they never really get to identify it, and after 4 days, it just takes off, and they can't even find it anymore.
Wow.
That's just crazy.
Dude, that
These are like
sucks.
the top of the line
chase.
So
Could you imagine chasing something for 4 days and it's just gone? That would suck.
So that's an interesting story about how these things are. I'm sure there's a lot more submarine sightings of these things than they're letting they're letting everybody else know. I mean, think about how many subs are out and how long they stay down the water. So
right,
they have pretty sophisticated arrays and stuff like that, and pick up stuff like that.
Right,
You just can't talk about it. So
I watch a lot of the police chases and stuff online, and they will usually terminate those out of public safety and stuff. Like if it's going too crazy, or they've entered like a highly populated area, or there's lots of traffic or whatever. Like sometimes they'll just say, okay, this isn't, it's not worth pursuing. We'll terminate the pursuit, and we can locate them later on, when things aren't as crazy. But when it comes to these military operations and military ships, or things in the air or in the sky or whatever, it's like you don't really have to worry about that. So it's kind of crazy to hear about this like 4-day long chase, but it totally makes sense because the security that you are concerned with actually depends on you finding this thing, rather than you kind of saying, okay, we're going to terminate the pursuit. So that's kind of crazy.
You want to be able to identify, especially with an enemy sub or something.
Yeah, if it's an
this
enemy
thing
or whatever. Yeah,
is outracing your best sub, so you got to figure out if it's somebody else's and they got better technology than you.
Yeah, then you're at a
That's
disadvantage.
pretty important.
Oh yeah.
All right, so these are the Soviet stories I was telling you about. So this comes from a Soviet researcher named Vladimir Azaza in the 70s and 80s. So
Okay.
the Soviets had a special project to investigate USOs. So they were looking into USOs specifically. They go around and look for USOs.
Okay.
So one of the stories he tells about how, well, he said that they initially believed that the USOs were American subs. And then they were like, no, these subs are just way too fast. They do too many crazy maneuvers. There's no way these could be Americans. So we got to figure out what they are and what they're doing.
These ones are too crazy. Can't be Americans.
I mean, if they're going to like crazy depths and coming straight up and not getting any kind of decompression or anything like that, then
Right.
you want to figure out how they're doing that, who's doing it.
Yeah.
Especially if they're in your what you call your water, you know.
Well, and when was this? Like, is the Cold War
In the
stuff
70s.
going around?
Yeah.
Around then,
Yeah,
like,
Cold
yeah.
War.
So yeah, it's really important at this
Actually, want to
time.
make sure they're not the Americans, especially they're being that close to your ocean or whatever, your coast. So.
Oh yeah.
So he talks about how there was an incident in the Arctic Sea with the Soviet icebreaker. So the Soviet icebreaker was breaking the ice in the Arctic like they do, you know, to keep the trade routes open and let other ships get through. So
Yeah.
so they're going through the ocean and they're breaking up this ice, and all of a sudden a UFO shoots out of the ice right next to them and just hovers there for a second. And they said it was going so fast they thought it was a missile at first. That's how fast it's going. They just broke through the ice and just hung there.
Wow.
And so that's pretty crazy.
And it broke through the ice too, so it wasn't just like coming out of the water. Wow.
Yeah, it broke through the ice without any kind of damage or anything.
That's crazy.
I mean, you can't. It's hard to fly through a wall of ice. I mean, you don't want to really do that unless you.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got to think like the whatever they're using to break the ice, whatever the Soviets are using to break the ice, they're not just crashing their ships into it, you know, like they're using something to break it.
Ships are specially designed to break ice.
Exactly. So they're not just like ramming straight through it or anything. I mean, good lord.
And they're gonna be pretty heavy duty for that kind of stuff, you know.
Well, and then for it to just kind of hover above them afterwards.
Yeah, like, you know, hey, what's up? You know, we can do this a lot easier than you can. And
oh yeah, that's got to be really intimidating. And during the Cold War, when tensions are really high and everyone's on edge, and I mean, there's been interviews and stuff with people just you know, that were either in the military or whatever from that period that have said, you know, tensions were so high to the point where people just genuinely didn't know if they were going to be, you know, if they were going to be alive again tomorrow, you know, because it was we're talking nuclear threats, like nuclear war. It's like once the trigger's pulled, I mean, yeah.
We said like girls in elementary school where you had on your desk because they expecting the elementary nuclear attack, you know, like the desk doesn't do anything for you, but
no, but I mean, good lord. And so anything like it's just kind of anything that adds on to that would be terrifying.
Yeah, especially you're out there doing your job and you see something, you think there's a missile coming out of the water, you're gonna freak out a little bit. So.
Oh, definitely. Okay.
Right, so the next one, which is a pretty famous incident that a lot of people have heard about, is called the Shag Harbour Incident. So.
Okay.
Go ahead and bring that up.
Okay.
So the story is that it was dark at night. It was late at night, and it's a small fishing village off the Atlantic coast in Nova Scotia. And they see something like hovering in the air, and then it like kind of slams into the water, and they see like they see it hit the water, and then like a bunch of like weird foam comes out where it hit the water, like a sulfurish kind of bad smelling foam, kind of like it had like a malfunction when it hit the water, or maybe to release some material or something like that. And that's one of the weird things about it, is that it left some kind of evidence behind, some kind of indicator that it crashed into the water.
Wow.
So, I mean, we can go into Shag Harbour a little bit more on another episode because it's got its own thing. There's supposed to be a lot of Men in Black encounters during that incident because of a lot of eyewitnesses and stuff like that.
Oh wow.
So the main thing is that they see this object crash into the water, and they can actually see under the water the lights from the ship or whatever it is, the object that crashed in the water. So they call the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard comes and they're like, all right, we need to go check this out. It might be a crashed airplane. We're going to take these ships. I guess they didn't bring ships with them for some reason, but anyway, they grab some fishermen's ships because it's a fishing village, and they go out to look over the water, and they can see the under the water, but they don't see any kind of like people or anything like that, floating to the top or something. So they actually send a Navy dive team after them. And so the Navy dive team goes down to look at the ship. And what they reported was that they saw what looked like almost like arc welding under the water, like lights.
Yeah.
Like arc welding. And they said that it was being done by non-human entities.
What the?
So
That's creepy. That terminology always like freaks me out. Like, why? I don't know. Why do they feel the need to say that? Why don't they just straight up be like aliens or fish or like fish people?
Jellyfish.
I don't know. Yeah, it's jellyfish. Like, I don't know.
You're crazy.
Yeah, but non-human entity. That just is like, that's so sci-fi. Like, it makes you immediately think of aliens.
And some say that there was a second ship next to the first ship, like they were trying to repair the first ship, like it crash landed in the water, and they were trying to help it out.
Wow.
So that's what the Navy divers said they saw, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And these are Navy divers, and they've seen a lot of stuff, so they will probably want to come out with some crazy stories.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
They're used to recovering bodies and recovering stuff like that, so they're probably pretty reliable.
Okay, so possible future episode.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things about the Shag Harbour incident. All right,
nice.
So next one, I couldn't find an article on this one. Is actually on the USS John F. Kennedy, July 2nd, 1971. So they were also in the Caribbean, and they're doing what's called carrier qualification exercises, which is where they do like drills to see how fast they can get a ship off the ship, stuff like that. Make sure they're made the time, they're meeting their specs. And so they're doing that. They finish all their drills. They're doing good. They pass everything, and they're heading back to the U.S. and they get into the Bermuda Triangle. And then suddenly, all the communication gear is like speaking gibberish. Like nothing comes out that makes sense.
Yeah.
So something happened to the communication gear. So the guys in the communication room hear somebody screaming over the intercom saying, "This is what the movie said." It said, "It's God. It's the end of the world," which is not something you want to hear when you're in the middle of communicating.
Yeah, no thanks. Don't want to hear that.
Somebody screamed that out over the communication, which is gonna freak a lot of people out. It's not something you want to do on a ship either. So
yeah.
So they're like, "What's going on?" And they hear again on the intercom, "It's hovering over the ship." So they go outside the comm room to look at whatever's hovering over the ship. So they go out on the deck, and they see this large blood red orb hovering above the ship. Communication system was down, and they also couldn't launch any aircraft or lock weapons onto it, which is crazy.
Crazy. Okay.
All right. And then the last one I couldn't find another thing was this was happening in 1885 around Hawaii. So like the British ships would go out to like the islands, like how the story about the Charles Darwin and stuff like that, how he went to the
Finches and stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So usually they had like a science officer on there who would go and catalog new species and check out this stuff and try to get as much information on the islands that they go to and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So the guy who reported this was one of those. So he's probably a pretty good eyewitness. He's good at observing stuff. He knows he's pretty scientific about stuff. So they're out in the middle of the ocean, and this is in 1885. So if you're out in the middle of the ocean, it's pretty dark. There's not a lot. I mean, I'm sure it's pretty dark now, but I mean, even then, it's even worse. So, like the guy said in the movie, you don't know what the moon phase was, so it could have been a full moon, it could have been some light out there, but it's pretty dark anyway.
Yeah.
So they're cruising through the ocean, and they see another blood red orb come out of the ocean and hover over them. And they said this one kind of was an orangish red, but who knows what what actual color it was, but
Right.
And so they see this thing hovering, and then it dives back into the ocean again, and then it comes back up and it starts hovering again. And they said the UFO was so bright that they could, it was like day on the deck. They could see, like, I mean, he said in
Really?
his report that they could drop a needle on the deck and be able to pick it up because it's so bright.
Wow, that's crazy. It's like there was, I mean, because when you think of like a blood red sun, when I was, gosh, I wish I could remember what grade I was in. I was maybe in like second grade or something, but it must have been an eclipse or something that was going on. But I didn't know anything about it. I was just a kid. Like I was in second grade. I had no idea what the hell. But anyways, I was sitting at the bus stop one day and I looked up in the sky because all the kids around were like, "Oh my God, look at that!" And like the sun was literally like this dark blood red. Like it was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I've still to this day I've never seen the sun look like that ever. And it was just this wild, deep, dark red color, and the rest of the sky was just like this dark orange, and it was really wild, and I was like, holy crap, it's crazy. It must have been some kind of eclipse or something, but that's like the only thing I can compare what you're talking about to. And if they saw anything like that, and two of them, I would be like, holy fuck, what the hell's going on?
Especially in 1885 when there's nothing in the sky.
Right, yeah, there's nothing. Oh, dude. Wow.
And you're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that's pretty much unexplored territory. That's so you're thinking like, I don't know. That'd be just crazy.
What do you attribute that to, that other than something, non-human? That's crazy. And multiple people saw it, right? It was not just the
the whole ship saw it.
Yeah, the whole ship. So that's crazy. Dang.
Yeah. I mean, and that wasn't the oldest one that I found. I mean, there's lots of USO sightings, in history, but one of the more interesting ones was the Christopher Columbus UFO sighting.
Oh, well, it would make sense.
1492.
Okay, let me find that. Let me pull that up. We have documented evidence of this one.
Yeah, somebody took a picture of this, so we're lucky.
There's reported. Yeah, it's pretty wild actually. I don't know how they did this, but when you guys see this,
I drew a picture real quick,
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it, like obviously Christopher Columbus right there, being the leader that he is, right at the front of the ship, looking at looks like he's even giving it a thumbs up, like he's approving of it. Like it's pretty amazing. And oh my God, this dude off to the right, there's just the two guys off to the right that are just standing on top of the water. Man, this just goes to show that back then there was technology that was being used that we still don't have any idea of to this day. So pretty wild stuff. You can see obviously the underwater or the unidentified submerged object is coming out of the water there. This big giant blue light circular object, obviously, with the waves being pushed out to the side, and Christopher Columbus is giving that thumbs up again. So yeah, pretty crazy documented evidence here of the Christopher Columbus USO. Do you want to tell us more about it before?
Yeah, well, the actual report was that, and that's not. I mean, that's what they saw, but he didn't want to sound crazy, so he just put in his report that on October 11th, they saw a light in the distance while they were staying on the ship. And the light was so faint that only one crew member could see it, and it looked like it was a candle off in the distance, going up and down. But
yeah,
I mean, back in that day, you don't expect to see things like that. So
no, not at all. And I'm starting to uncover some more documented evidence of that incident. If you want to tell us a little bit more about it, while I find that. Wow, this one's actually. Yeah, this is a lot more detailed. You can see the object much more clearly. So just give me a second here, you guys.
Right. I thought I heard that he had a second sighting where they just saw like a light, like something in the water that looked like a big globe of light, like underneath the ship. But
no, it looks.
I couldn't find that online.
I think I found it. Oh yeah. Here we go. This is it. The globe one, right? That's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of, yeah. Okay. So, obviously, documented evidence here. Clearly, this, like, it's the look of that dome, right? That's obviously the globe one they're talking about here. It's emerging out of the ocean. This thing is the size of a planet itself almost. Like, this thing is huge. And again, some magic is going on with Christopher Columbus's crew that honestly, we're going to have to do an episode about this because I don't hear anybody talking about this, but Christopher Columbus's crew apparently could walk on water. As you can see, that he does have the guy right there in the middle that is just, he's standing overboard, but he appears to be standing in the water while also holding onto the ship. So
I have those things on the side. I use them all the time in Sea of Thieves.
That's true. That he must just have.
But the thing I want to point out is that they have a spare fucking steering wheel, apparently.
Well,
you
needed that back then, obviously.
Well, in case cannon hits it, you know how bad it is to try to steer a ship with a broken steering wheel.
Well, there's no AAA. You can't just like call somebody up to like come fix your vehicle or whatever. Like, you need spare parts. And yeah, so the triceps on that guy must be really strong because he's holding himself up with one arm over the side of the ship with a fully extended arm. So yeah, anyways, that was the second sighting. It's pretty incredible stuff that you can only get here on the Full Grown Pizza podcast. So
of course, if you are on the ship, you want to be in full uniform.
Of course.
Full outfit.
Of course.
All the time. You gotta look nice all the time.
Yeah.
So, think about all these USO sightings. I think it really points to, like we said before, that there is probably multiple alien bases under the ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some in the Caribbean. We had some in the around Alaska, in the Pacific. You know, around Hawaii. Some around the Soviet area. The Soviets actually believe there is a UFO base underneath in the center of the Black Sea. They really believe that, which is weird because we're actually building a base next to the Black Sea right now.
Wow.
So maybe we know something too. So anyway,
maybe.
I mean, if you're gonna put a UFO base, that's the best place to put it. You know,
I think it makes
especially
sense.
if you want to be as close to the people that you're observing, you know, without being actually in their way.
Yep.
And if the water is nothing to you, I mean, it can't be worse than outer space. So why can't you do it in the ocean? You know,
right?
And
no, I think it
if
makes
you can
perfect
leave
sense.
the water and fly through with if you have transmedium ships, then it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because I mean, again, if you look at, we've talked about this before, but if you look at the ley lines, you look at this ley line map here, we've discussed before that the ley lines tend to line up with a lot of these sightings of these UFOs and these USOs and even the black or the dark pyramid sightings, or at least our theories as to where these dark pyramids might be. And so I think it would make sense. I mean, if you've got these, you know, USOs or underwater sea bases, we even talked about Atlantis being one of those sea bases, essentially, that it just submerged because it needed to go under, you know, it needed to go down to keep
go deeper
getting,
to get the materials I wanted.
Yep, to keep getting the materials and to keep advancing, it needed to go down rather than up.
I think there's something about ley lines attracting minerals, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure at
It's supposed to exhibit some kind of force, so why wouldn't it attract like metallic objects? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like a big magnet or something like that.
Or at least
Maybe it doesn't attract them, but it actually creates them with electromagnetic field mixing with some stuff.
Force, you know.
Yeah.
It also increases your magic and your arcane skills.
Yeah.
According to
So if you're gonna be
Warcraft.
a chaos wizard, you want to be next to a ley lines.
Yep. Makes
But
perfect
we
sense.
talk about with the churches how maybe ley lines increase the you know the religious feelings or what did we talk about that one time?
Well, we were talking about the religious buildings being constructed near these areas because the frequency or like the reverberation or whatever, this magnetic field is kind of it kind of goes
amplifier.
Yeah, essentially it amplifies a certain frequency that our brain resonates with when it comes to spiritual connection and positive,
so it kind of opens you up to like having like religious
positive emotions and things like that. kind of like with the whole chaos magic thing, where we did a whole episode on chaos magic, where it was like, okay, well, and poltergeists and things like that too, where we talked about resonance and frequencies and how emotions are tied to certain frequencies and stuff. Like horror movies will have like a really low frequency playing during the movie when they want to elicit some kind of a feeling of discomfort or whatever. It's not something we can hear, but it's something that we can feel. And I think there's similar things going on here with those kinds of things, where you may not hear these frequencies, but the resonation of whatever this material is, or the magnetic fields or whatever, is something that
it's going to have some kind of reaction to
it's
you.
going to allow us, it's going to open us up for certain emotional responses and things like that.
Yeah, you may not consciously feel it, but your body's going to, react to it.
Right, exactly. So
when they talked about we talked about that one, I think we talked about that tomb that they like the sound is at exactly like 40 megahertz, which opens people up to having religious, awakenings and stuff like that, which is interesting. Or like we all know about the Cuban sickness they had, where it was supposedly there was a loose screw on the fan, and everybody started hearing this vibration go out through the whole building. Everybody started getting sick from it because of that.
Yeah.
And,
it's the brown tone. Yep.
Yeah. We don't have that episode on this, but
no,
we should put it behind the paywall and release it. The brown tone was a good one. So.
Yeah, it was funny. But yeah, that's wild stuff, and I like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
I like talking about.
We have 5% of the ocean map. We should really get down there and explore that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk, when he's done doing everything else he's doing, he should just...
once he gets to Mars, he should
fund... Yeah, go to Mars, and then fund underwater expeditions and focus on that. Yeah. That's something that we've really lost. Like, I think... And I've said this in a bunch of different episodes, but I really think we've lost that sense of adventure and, like,
we think we know everything already. Like whatever we're gonna look for stuff.
Right, and I think it's cool that Elon Musk is kind of bringing that back to this sense that he wants to go out to space and like go to Mars and stuff like that, because we went to the moon, and then it was like after that we're kind of like, well, just send some satellites out there, or whatever. Yeah. It's like that's not as cool. That's not as cool. Like we need people.
Super bummed that it wasn't made of cheese. Like,
I know they're like, the cheese here sucks, man. Yeah,
it's not something that we can make money off of, so it's not worth it.
Yeah, go back. It was Wallace and Gromit that were heading that expedition, and they decided this sucks. We're done. We're done with space. Yeah. Oh man. No, but that's definitely something that we need, Yeah.
Yeah, we do. We do need more exploration.
We need adventurers and explorers and stuff again, like that drive and motivation and like the excitement of those things. Like we need that in our culture, and we just kind of replaced it with movies and TV shows and all that stuff, which is not as cool.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know, watch people do it, then do it yourself. So.
Right. So. Anyways, well, before we wrap up, I actually do have some shows and things I want to talk about. If you want to do some pizza tokens. Yeah, so pizza tokens. I did a lot of catching up on anime, so I fully caught up, at least as far as the dub goes, on Solo Leveling, which is really cool.
Good, right?
It is really good. I'm liking it a lot. It's pretty good. It's cool. And then I also caught up on My Hero Academia, which I thought that was the last season, so at the end of it I was like, the fuck, what, there's another what? Well, I thought that was...
I had to catch up on that one already, so.
Yeah, so I caught up on that one, and then I started watching a different one called like Shangri-La Frontier or something, and it's another Shangri-La Frontier or something like that. Anyways, it's another one of those going into a video game world kind of game or show. And this one's really cool too, because it's like, what's interesting about this one is the main character, he's this guy they call a trash gamer, and essentially he gets tons in their world. There's just so many video games that there's a whole sect of gamers called trash gamers that enjoy playing really shitty games. Like that's what
they're all
they
buggy and stuff
yeah,
like
they
that.
love playing the buggy games. They love discovering new bugs and glitches and different things with the games. And so anyways, he's like one of the top tier, trash gamers, and so he's um and he beats this really terrible trash game or whatever, and then he's like, well, now I don't know what to do with myself. And the game shop owner is like, well, why don't you try an actual good game for once? And so he's like, okay. So he tries this new VR. It's like the latest, greatest VR MMO game. And so he gets into it. And because he's so good at beating these terrible games that are really glitchy and buggy and everything else,
Yeah.
it makes him inherently really good at beating games that are actually good, because he's used to dealing with bullshit bugs and glitches and mechanics and stuff. And so it's been kind of fun to watch that, and I've been enjoying it a little bit, although I think I'm
It's
fully
fun.
caught up on it now too, and so now it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, that's what I've been watching.
You been playing anything? You get into the beta?
No, I actually haven't. Didn't get that yet. What have I
That's
been
pretty
playing?
good,
Been
pretty
playing
good.
Sworn a little bit. Well, I haven't really played
that
it
about?
much since. So Sworn is basically like Hades. It's another roguelike game where you're, except it's themed around King Arthur and Merlin and all that stuff. And so you're basically like, I think they call you a soul forged or something like that. So you're basically a character that is going and you're trying to defeat King Arthur, essentially, is my understanding. But it's in early access. It's not fully out yet. But anyways, what's really cool about it is, yeah, it's very replayable. You go in, if you haven't played Hades at all, essentially you start a level, and every time you beat a level, you get some kind of reward, whether it's a currency or you can get something called a blessing. And these blessings are like powers and buffs and things like that that augment how you play the game. And so you basically just go through, you beat a level, you go to the next level, you keep going, and then there's bosses and whatnot. And then when you die, you can take back all your currency and stuff that you made, and you can unlock new things. And then you go back in, you start over, and it's been really fun. It's a cool one. Plus, what's cool about that one, especially, like one of the standout points from it, is that it's co-op, so you can play with multiple people.
Cool.
Whereas Hades and some of the other similar games are just single player. So, yeah, it is kind of cool. It makes it a lot of fun.
No, part two. Part two is co-op too.
Oh, is it really? Oh, well, that's cool. So, anyways, that's a fun game. Been playing that a little bit, and what else have we been playing? Well, that's pretty much it. Some Path of Exile. And yeah. How about you guys?
I've been caught up on Soul 11. Pretty good, like I said.
Yeah.
I don't do the dub, so I'm pretty far. I don't know what they said. The dub was delayed for a couple weeks, right?
I don't know.
You see
I mean,
that?
it's
Like episode 5 was delayed for like 2 weeks or something like that because I had problems with dubbing.
I didn't see that, so I don't know. But I just figured it was delayed because the dubs are always delayed. The dubs are always behind the original show, so I don't know. And then I never actually stay with it. I'll just watch it until I can't watch it, and then I'll probably never watch it again. And for another like,
That's why I hate that they don't release all the episodes at once. Nobody got them, so
I
why don't
know.
just release them? They
It's
know
like-
people are gonna binge them, and then they're gonna forget about them. They can't binge them anymore. So
Yep, exactly. Well,
get
it's like
them all the episodes.
that's
so
how they
everybody watches
that's
it.
how they stretch out your subscription, though. They're like, they can't give you everything. Like, they have to. You gotta keep paying them monthly. Jeez,
You're
man.
gonna watch another show. I mean, you're not just gonna watch that one show and quit the subscription.
Oh, they gotta make their
just watch it
money.
for that one.
Well, isn't that how it works for a lot of people? Don't they be like, somebody will say, hey, this show's really good, you should watch it. And it's like, oh, well, I have to get the subscription. And so they get it, and then they watch the show, and then, well,
I mean,
and
I've
then
done that a couple times.
they get hooked on it by the other shows, and then you run into, there's usually enough content on there that you can stay hooked on it. But when it comes to the newer content, like if you're joining just to watch the newer content, they gotta trail you along a little bit. They gotta You know, it's like putting the milk at the back of the grocery store. You know, you got to walk down the
Yeah.
aisle and you got to see all the stuff and you got to like, ooh, well, I was here to get milk, but I actually need some bread and I need some, I need some cheese and whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
that's exactly what they're doing. So
Yeah, I get
yeah.
it. I don't know.
So, anyways, I'm
I just
probably not going to
wanted
watch
to
the show now for another few months, and then, or maybe a couple years or something, and then I'll
wait till
come
the new
back
season
to
comes
it.
out.
Because that's exactly what happened to me in My Hero Academia. Is like I watched most of it, and then I got to like the latest season or whatever, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I ran out of episodes that I could watch, and I hadn't watched it for like months or like a year or something. And now I
Yeah.
came back to Crunchyroll for some specific show that somebody told me about, and then I was like, oh, okay, well now I kind of want to watch something else. Let me go back to the show. And yeah, so anyways, how about you, Tor? What you been up to?
How much been up, Tor?
Cats? Petting cats?
Nothing. I don't watch shows. Watch anime.
Yeah, what about games though?
All I have is YouTube's. So I just watch YouTube.
What about games? What about your YouTubes? What about your streaming? How's that all going?
Yeah,
Man,
not great.
Talk about WoW some more. I mean, I didn't get into it too much, but everyone should know it's a pretty good game.
About what?
Monster Hunter.
Oh, Wild. I thought you said WoW. I'm like, yeah, I'm playing
that's what I thought you
Wild.
said too. I was like, what? He's been playing WoW?
Monster Hunter Wild. Wild.
Yeah, we got Wild. I don't know why you haven't got the beta. I mean, they gave it to me as soon as I asked for it.
Oh, I haven't asked for it. That's why.
Oh, okay. That's why.
Yeah, that's why.
Because it's like the stress test, so they're just like giving it to everybody.
Nope, that's why. You figured it out. Haven't asked for it yet.
But
I'll do it
it's
right now.
I don't know. It's like if you played Monster Hunter Worlds, it's like that. It's like the sequel to that. It's not like Rise, because Rise was like dumbed down so it could be on the Switch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I don't know. It's just like a better version of Monster Hunter Worlds to me. It's just like and they have like a new focus system and
Yeah, focus system is cool.
they upgraded my longsword, which is cool, and it has cool graphics and stuff. And
I like to be able to call the mount whenever you want too. That's nice.
well, you
you
can do
can
that in
attack for the mount,
Rise,
too.
Huh.
but yeah, you get on your mount to like drink your potions and sharpen your blades and switch weapons, which is the new thing.
Oh, really? That's kind of cool.
Yeah, you can switch weapons on the mount, which is nice.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can have two weapons. You have a primary and a secondary now.
That's kind of cool. That makes
Yeah.
things more interesting. Yeah.
And the cat seems fire this time too. So
Yeah, oh yeah, upgrading AI, of course.
Oh, really? Good. Nice.
it's pretty fun.
Okay. Well, I guess we could end it there. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Full Grown Pizza Podcast on USOs. Make sure to leave a comment down below letting us know what you think about that and any other topics you might want us to discuss or do an episode on. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Make sure to hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons and share it with a friend or family or coworker that's into conspiracy theories and UFOs and sci-fi and all that stuff. We do a lot of that stuff
Yeah.
here. So
Don't
make sure to
forget
check
our
out the
affiliate.
channel. And also, check out Ugly Chews, all natural dog treats if you are looking for some new dog treats for your doggo. And yeah, so I guess we can end it there. We'll call it there. See you guys.
Sounds good. Later.